What's been top of mind this week is, of course, that horrific accident, the tragedy of Thunderbell Park. 14 school children dead after the minibus taxi they were being transported in collided with a truck. The driver of that vehicle now facing murder charges in court. President Cyril Ramaphosa calling for a rethink on reliable school transport, even floating the yellow school bus model, as we probably know is in the United States. But there are advocates who say the problem starts inside our laws, not just the vehicles and our drivers. If we look at what the core problem is, it's the incongruency, it's the misalignment between the National Road Traffic Act and the policy, the Department of Basic Education's policy on scholar transport. In fact, children aren't even counted as full adults, as full passengers under the National Road Traffic Act. Under 3 years count as zero. 3 to 6 count as half an adult. 6 to 13 counts as 2/3 of an adult, which means that more children than seats in transport. And legally, there'd be no problem with that. Patric Solomons is the director of Molo Songololo. You've been talking about this for some time, several years now, about the incongruency of what we have, a policy of school transport, and what our actual transport laws say about who drives, who gets to ride, and whether children count as full passengers or not. Patrick?
It's been quite terrible that we haven't been able to give this some attention, and I think it reflects that we are not acting in the best interests of children, and especially our poor children. This has been going on for a long while, for quite many years now. There are many gaps within the law, but one of the other problems that we have is a lack of implementation, and that is problematic. So the children have a right to safe and reliable transport. Learners have a right to safe and reliable transport. Now, we do know where families and communities are unable to meet the needs of children. So the state have an obligation or responsibility that's clearly set out within our constitution and also within international law. But we have failed repeatedly, year in, year out, to prioritize children's safety within learner transport. And this is a problem. The other thing is also that our communities, our parents, our schools also haven't stepped up in terms of their obligation to sound the alarm, to raise the issue, right, and to ensure that children are safely transported. Every day, when you drive in our townships or drive in the city areas, you see children packed in minibus taxis or cars. And you see the police drive past, motorists drive past them. People are shocked, but nobody reports, nobody really do something about it. There's also educators who know and see that the vehicle that come pick up the children is not roadworthy. It doesn't look as if it is, but we're just not doing anything about it. Just last week, I had a parent complaining in Blikkiesdorp about the fact that they don't have transport for their children. The children attend school in Mitchell's Plain. When she raised the issue with the school said it's not their problem. It's more than 5 kilometers away.
Yep.
The school should have reported it, identified the child as a priority, and the school, I bet up to now, still haven't submitted the forms to the education department. The education department is not providing proper oversight, proper monitoring. And so everybody who have an obligation is not doing what they're supposed to do. And that is part of the problem that we have. Our children are not valued, especially our poor children.
We also have something that could be called the Bucky loophole, Regulation 250. It's a law that prohibits the transporting of children in goods compartments for reward. That's the law. But the reality is we still have thousands of learners who still travel on Buckies, especially in rural areas, because there the law would be less enforceable. The state subsidized learner transport doesn't reach enough children, particularly those in rural areas and those who have to travel far distances.
Yeah, that's correct. And also, like every adult who have responsibility towards children, they have an obligation to report when children are in need of care and protection. Educators have to do that. The health workers have to do that. Everybody that have some sort of duty towards children, parents, they have a right to report. But our child protection systems within the schools, within the communities, is not operating. They have an obligation, is there. The law provides that they should report these things, but we are not monitoring this. There's no monitoring system in place to do this. The schools are not asked to report on these things effectively. The education department don't do it. The transport department is also not fulfilling their obligation when it comes to learner transport. And so there is a lack of responsibility and obligation. And our provincial municipalities and our parliaments, provincial and national, is not fulfilling their oversight role when it comes to learner transport and the protection of children, because this is a child protection issue, because our children are dying. And so it's a child protection issue as well. And it is not even on the child protection framework that is there within the schools as a priority.
The president, Patric, calling for a rethink for safe, reliable transport, even floating the yellow school bus model used, for example, in the United States. But sorry to be the bearer of bad news here, but when I think of subsidized transport, I already think of what's the taxi industry going to say. If I think about costs and how already there have been problems played with a national feeding scheme properly, it's all good and well to say we probably should think of a national school transport model. I think we have so many other issues that we also have to address, like, for example, what the taxi industry would say.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, but I think we need to focus on the priorities here. The priorities that we have is that where children need transport, we need to provide that, and we need to prioritize children's safety and their rights, right? Those are the priorities. All those other issues, we need to deal with it and sort it out. But the priority is we need to meet our obligation to ensure safe and reliable learner transport. And then, Lester, there's also the other systemic problems, and that is the lack of transformation that we have, and the lack of providing services for children where they need it in their communities, right, and close to their homes, right?
And so Patric Solomons, have to leave it, the director of Molo Songololo.